Well, here we go. The Hunting Landman podcast. I think this is 51 or 52. 51, Bucky says. We've got a special guest here. Before we get to our special guest, this special guest is very familiar with Southern Ag Credit, who always sponsors the Hunting Landman podcast and the TV show. They take great care of us. I've got a closing with Alex one day next week, and I've got another one. I know I've got one personally next month. So, I mean, they're always taking care of us and taking care of our clients too. All right, we've got Adam Perry, I guess my favorite closer. Is that fair?
That's true.
Attorney. I have to say that because he's on here. But no, I close more deals with Adam than anybody. He lives right here in Wilson County. We went to the same high school. Our kids are in school together, so it makes it real easy. And something that people don't know out there is Adam and I see who can get the closest to the bell every day. And you know, usually when Ace is opening the door to get out of school, the bell is going off, and Adam's either right in front or right behind me.
That's right. It's a fight for last place, typically.
Well, what we're going to do today, Adam, like I said, is a good attorney, and we're going to talk about the legal side of real estate. So many people that listen to this podcast are interested in, you know, buying land or flipping land or improving land. Okay, what do they need to know from a legal standpoint? So I've got a list of things here. We're going to probably talk a little bit of turkey hunting since turkey season is upon us, and of course, Adam is a big turkey hunter. If you grow up in Amite or Wilson County, it's kind of bred in you.
That's right.
All right, here we go. Well, Adam, thank you for being on here. We're going to start this thing off. Okay, I'm looking for land, and have called Slade. I found my piece of land, and we write a contract. All right, we're going to start right there. I'll answer this, and then okay, so. Typically, if a real estate agent is involved, the agent writes the contracts. These contracts are written by attorneys for the state, and they've been approved 1,000 times. But if you're buying a tract of land and an agent's not involved, great idea to call somebody like Adam. I'm sure y'all have a standard purchase agreement y'all use.
We do, and it has a lot of the same things that the realtors' contracts that they use. But we'll have things in there like reservation of minerals, or if there's anything specific, just like y'all have that like addendum that y'all put specific requirements, and
right.
we'll have very similar. We're
it's
usually a little more detailed on describing the property, not necessarily with a parcel number. Right. We'll have the description, but other than that, they're basically the same. And
so, you know, and what both of these contracts have on them is it protects the buyer and the seller. Basically, what you write on that paper, you better hold up your end of it, or there could be consequences.
Yeah, and that's usually in the term of earnest money, but there's also remedies like specific performance. So if you breach, I can actually make you go through with the sale, vice versa. But with earnest money, it's basically if you waste my time and breach, I get to keep that money. So,
right. So that the way that works, I'll say this in redneck terms, is if let's say me and you, buyer and seller, me and Adam have a purchase agreement. I decide 2 days from closing, just because on a whim I don't want to close, and I've put up $5,000 in earnest money. Adam is entitled to that earnest money, and actually per the real estate contracts, the agent's entitled to half and the seller's entitled to half. Usually, a lot of times we just give it to the client because, you know, we're sad too, and we want him to let us help him sell his land. But specific performance is different because, I mean, like it says, you have to do what you said you're going to do. So if you were going to sell me this tract of land, you decide not to, well, I can sue you to make you buy it.
Yeah, correct. Usually, obviously, no one wants to get to that point, but...
Have you ever done one?
I've never actually sued to enforce the contract. Typically, you know, honestly, the market being so hot helps with that, because you can either waste a year going after someone for a specific performance as a seller. Because you have to take your property off the market while that's being done. Yeah, because if I'm a buyer and I come in and I'm going to be like, look, I don't really want to be involved with this litigation and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you can. I don't see them very often just because people usually just want to move on. Right,
and typically when you look into the cost of what this is going to cost and the time, hey, let's just do what we said we're going to do.
That's right.
So yeah, basically on all these contracts, if you do what you say you're going to do on there, you can keep yourself out of trouble. Speaking of, you brought up a good point, how hot the market is right now. Now, Adam has just as good a pace on it as I do because, you know, every time somebody buys something in this county or some of the surrounding counties, they got to go to Adam or another attorney. So he keeps a pulse on, is your stack high on your desk?
Yeah, and I think I got 5 new requests in just today. But it's hot and cold. At the beginning of the year, it started to cool off a little bit with interest rates, but it's right now it's just more chaos, more chaotic than I've had it all year. I think I got 40 active requests on my whiteboard, and that's not including the ones that have the title issues that are kind of I've been chipping at for a while. And I've talked to other local attorneys that you and I work with all the time that it's the same way. Everybody's swamped, which is a good thing.
It is, yeah. We pray to be swamped.
That's right. And I just ask for grace whenever.
That's right. And that's what, people, one thing I can tell you how to stay in good graces with attorneys, realtors, the ladies in the office who are actually the most important in my office and Adam's office is communication. So, so many times people have not communicated at all, and then they call the closing office the 2 days before. Hey, what about, well, we requested this. Did you check your email? Stay in communication. I am the world's worst. I actually apologized to a banker today. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not trying to do your job. I just want to be helpful. We have 4 deals all pending on each other in Louisiana. And I said, I just want to this is a lot. I want to make sure you have everything you need and everybody's up to speed, because I'm okay as an agent chasing down the rabbits.
Right.
And so because, hey, if we don't close, you don't get paid, I don't get paid.
Yeah, and honestly, there's nothing more refreshing for a real estate attorney to have a realtor say, their first communication is not, when can we close? It's, what can I do to help you get it to the finish line? Whether it's, and some may feel like they're above this kind of work, but it's something as small as, will you please get the Social Security number for the seller? I know I can do it, but I'm going to have to stop running title to do it. Will you please help me out there? And you do a good job with that, because I think one time you offered to fly to Wyoming to get something signed that I needed to get done. So that kind of stuff not only helps me, helps our relationship, but also helps your client, because when I have that kind of help, people who aren't worried about I'm above that kind of work, I can get your deal done a lot quicker and more efficiently. So.
And I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. This is what so Adam and I and several different bankers we work with a lot, surveyors, same thing. If I treat this as my team, it's my tackle box. It's, when the bass are biting, you grab the right bait, the white spinner bait or whatever it is. And anyway, I always say this, and I've heard Adam say it too. If you got a problem, I got a problem. And what I mean by that is, if Adam says, dude, look, something came up and I've got a problem, we can't close for 2 days, I'm not mad at Adam, because guess what? Next deal, it may be something on my end, or maybe something on the surveyor's end. And when you work with good quality people like Adam, and I hope myself, and there's a lot of other good people out there, look, we're doing everything we can to get this closed. Things happen. And this isn't like, especially what Adam and I do in the land business, it's not like this lot has been sold 42 times and you just pull the parcel number and you sell it. I mean, a lot of these things maybe the title hadn't been ran in, 50 years, 100 years.
Dealing with one now, guy's owned it since the 40s, in the 50s, and he's bought it in pieces, and it's just been kind of everybody always thinks that, it's been in my family so long, it should be an easy title. That's
not the one I got on the creek, is it?
No, it's another county, but that actually makes it worse. Not saying worse like that it's bad, but when the family's property's been in a family for a really long time, that means it's probably gone through estates, intestate succession, probate and wills, all that kind of stuff. That's extra stuff we got to look at. But if it's been sold numerous times, there's a chance I did the title already.
Right.
And I can start from where I did the title last and bring it forward. And so
that's actually, he just brought up a good point. I hate to cut you off. And Adam knows this. I like to use the attorney who did it last time for a couple of reasons.
Right.
They don't ever find faults in their own work. If they do, you don't hear about it.
That's true.
And it makes it easier,
Yeah, I would say from a realtor's perspective that, it may benefit to use the same person every time. Now, we all know, just like with everything, with bankers, realtors, attorneys, there's some folks that if you're protecting your client, you do
100%.
Yeah. So if you see that a particular attorney, that certifies title, that is always maybe potentially having a problem, with things, that you may want somebody different to go behind. I'm not throwing any names at all.
And usually, and Adam's going to know what I'm talking about, we have these people that come and close that or, you know, I know they're not doing a good job on these titles. It's not my job or Adam's job to call these people out because we're not involved in it, but like, you know that this client is not being taken care of.
Right. And I warn realtors all the time about this kind of thing is quicker is not always better. And I have a good friend in Liberty that we say that all the time is being fast may be great, may get your deal done, but, you know, or they're not worried about this issue that you saying there is. Well, eventually I'm going to get that title back. And eventually I'm going to maybe slow down and do it the correct way. And yeah, it was nice and fun and fast when you bought it 5 years ago. Now that I've come back behind this person and ran title and found an issue, and it's a problem, and now it's your problem, you know.
This is going to seem like an idiot question to you, and I know it basically, but our listeners probably don't. When you say I'm getting a realtor, I'm getting a title inspection or you're running title, what does that mean?
So that means I go to the courthouse, and a lot of people think you just push a button on a computer. It's not that way. Like,
especially in Wilkinson County.
Wilkinson County, it's gotten a lot better, but Wilkinson County, it is, you got to do a lot of research in the books. And basically what I'm doing, I'm running conveyance records, which is showing this person deeded to this person, this to this person. For every transaction with all the different parties involved, I'm also running deeds of trust. Do they have a mortgage on it? If they did, has it properly been canceled? All that kind of stuff. Then I run chancery. Chancery is to make sure there's not any lawsuits on the property or had ever been any lawsuits on the property. Is it still open? All those kind of things. Estates. Has someone died? Did they do the estate correctly? All those kind of things. And then you check federal tax liens. Have these guys paid their federal taxes?
We've been there before.
Right, and those are pretty bad. There's federal tax liens. That's usually as bad as it gets. Construction liens. Did this person have a plumber come out there and didn't pay them, and is there a lien against that? Lis pendens, that's when usually an attorney files a notice saying that, hey, I'm about to sue on this property for X, Y, Z, you know, and that's to let a potential buyer know, hey, don't buy this potential, or be aware that we're about to file suit on it. And then
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and then judgments. You know, if someone has a judgment against them in the county, it applies to everything they own.
What would be a judgment
So if you didn't pay a credit card bill, and credit card company came and there's thousands of them in Wilkinson County, and took you to court, you didn't answer, they can file a judgment against you, and it's good for 7 years. And so
basically, if you sell that property, you got to satisfy that.
That's right. You got to pay them, and a lot of time there's delay there because sometimes I'm dealing with it right now. I have a judgment right now with a state agency. It's a nightmare just finding the people to tell you how much you owe them. You know, and so that could be a month delay.
And dealing with the government. What one person says, the government says they're not liable for. So I paid it off.
Right.
That's the guy you talked to that day.
And unless I'm getting a written payoff, I'm not just going by somebody's word on the telephone. State tax liens, and very important, make sure your ad valorem taxes are paid. So there, in each person that conveys, we run that person's name through every one of those things. So,
and this is all, this is all to make sure that you have a good title to your property, and that nobody can ever say, no, that's my property.
That's right. And that's exactly right. That's me telling you, giving you an opinion. And now I'm going to tell you what right-of-ways are there and those kind of things, but those aren't really title defects. Those are things that are there. That's not anything you cure. They're just there. But I'm telling you about those things just so you're a wary buyer, but I'm also telling you if there's liens, or if, they describe the property this way, one way, but they kind of missed a few lines in the description that we need to fix. And, a tile exam, I think it's a no-brainer for any serious purchase.
I agree. It's funny. I didn't write a lot of this stuff down. That when you say stuff, I'm like, oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. For instance, when you, hey, Adam, this is going to be a double question. I'm buying a place for cash. I've saved up money buying for class. Do I need to get title insurance?
I would say I'm never going to discourage someone to get title insurance. A lot of times, at a minimum, you need to get a title exam. Okay,
and that's what we just went over.
That's what we just went over. The difference in a title exam and title insurance probably covers a little more things, because I'm going to have some boilerplate exceptions in there saying, like, if there's an issue with the property that I wouldn't have found in the courthouse, I'm not liable for it. Right? There's a little more broad coverage with title insurance. Title insurance costs more. But it's the same premise. I'm going to run title for a title exam, and I'm going to run that same title for title insurance. It's just I'm giving it to you in a different form. There's a little more coverage on title insurance, and it's bigger pockets. I may die tomorrow, and so you may consume my firm, but eventually maybe the firm goes away, or eventually. But title insurance with a company like First American, they're big pockets, and you can get owner's insurance up to the purchase price. So if you bought a piece of property for $100,000, I can insure up to $100,000 for you if there's an issue.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I got Southern Ag or UMB or any of the banks that we use, and they always get a lender's policy, correct?
Correct. So lender's policy, owner's policy. Lender's policy is saying we want protection for our loan. So if they lend you $100,000, I can write them a lender's policy saying that if any issues come up with title other than what I've found,
especially because they own the property.
Well, yeah, and they're covered up to their loan amount, and the purchaser is covered up to his purchase price. Now, I know where you're heading with this question, and it's if there's already a lender's policy, do I also need to purchase owner's insurance?
No.
Yeah, well, see, again, I'm never going to discourage anyone from purchasing.
It's nothing wrong with being overinsured, but like Adam said, I've heard him say it, they wouldn't give you the money if they didn't feel good about it.
Well, yeah, so basically, I've already certified the title to your bank. They're not giving you $100,000 if the title wasn't good, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll tell them is they're not covered if they don't buy the owner's insurance. If there's an issue, the bank's covered and they're not. But again, a bank's not going to give you a bunch of money if I haven't already certified title. Now, with that being said, it depends on who you get to run your title. So would I recommend it with me running your title all the way? Maybe, maybe not. But some other people, I would definitely always say get owner. So not a bad idea, but, the lawyer in me saying always get it.
Right.
Practicality. First American may kick me out if I say no. So
right. Yeah, it's never anything wrong with being overinsured. I never get owner's insurance when I get a loan. I think I've got owner. I never get additional. I think I do. Did we do one when I bought?
You get it when I don't run it.
Okay.
Is what happens. If I run it, you don't get it.
Right.
Because you trust how.
Right. Well, it's easier. I can just, I know where he lives.
That's right. You can hunt me down if I mess up.
Right.
So.
Well, guys, so many good questions are coming up in my mind as we talk about this. All right, let's just do this. All right, Adam, I'm fixing to buy a tract of land. I found my place. I write a contract, which this is where I was starting, and I started with contracts. Do I need to put it in an LLC?
Yeah, but there's some nuances there. So putting your property in an LLC, and let's just say you're buying it, you're a single member LLC. It's the equivalent of you owning it, but you're getting some protection there. So if someone slips and falls on your property, steps in an armadillo hole, whatever it is, that they can sue the assets for your LLC and not necessarily come after you individually. With that being said, if you own 1,000 acres in the LLC and you want to buy another 100, it may be worth putting it in a different LLC, because right now I have an LLC that owns more than I own individually. So, sometimes we get wrapped up in this. I got to put this in my LLC, put this in my LLC. Well, you get so many assets, then
I'm guilty of all this.
Right. And so, in theory, the best thing would be every time you buy a piece of property, put it in a different LLC.
I've been wanting to start an LLC called Hunting Landman Enterprises. So you're just right. Talking me in. See, he came in here and got free legal work.
There you go. So I guess what I'm saying is the only issue with the drawback of doing LLC after LLC is that that's a separate tax return. That's it's just more cost. I would encourage you to always set up a bank account for that particular LLC. And I'm rambling, but one thing that's important with an LLC is that
treat it like a business.
Act like an LLC, right? If you're writing checks out of the LLC to get your hair cut, which I've been guilty of, or those kind of things, then you're not treating an LLC. Your LLC expenses need to be written out of that checking account. And the reason for that is if you act like you're not operating as an LLC, and someone gets hurt on your property, they could potentially pierce the veil of the corporate protection and come after you individually. So as you see when we do a closing, I'll do a resolution, and it'll be you're a single member LLC, and I'm doing a resolution that says Slade Priest is authorizing Slade Priest to sign on behalf of the company. Now that sounds silly, but that's further proof that you're operating as a company and further protection that an injured party may not be able to pierce that corporate veil.
I thought about something when you said something twice. I was about to write it down and I forgot again. It'll come back in a minute. This is good stuff, though. I think this is good information for people. We're going to keep going down my list, man. You know, I always buy land in my different LLCs that we have. And I also have some LLCs with a partner, which leads me into my next question, or a couple partners. If I'm buying land with a partner, and let's say we start Adam and Slade LLC, what do I need to know? Is that okay? Is that what are the negatives? What's the nightmares here?
When you own a company with an LLC, it's just, you know, the one thing is it's okay. I mean, like people do it all the time. It's not a big deal. But your operating agreement is going to be very important in this situation. And you and I both know some individuals that have come to blows over operating.
Yeah. Or family.
Right. And we prepare one. One, there needs to be some form of buyout. Like, what if someone dies? Like, does their interest in the LLC go to, you know, their family, or does it go to the other member?
And this is all in the operating agreement.
Right. All that kind of stuff is controlled by the operating agreement when that happens. So LLCs are good, but operating agreements are important, and you need to read them and don't just sign a form.
Right. So. Guilty.
Yeah.
That's what
I prepared the form. So
that's right. That's why you got to trust. I tell my people, if I have to read the form, we don't need to do business, which is terrible. But I'm so guilty of, you know, you always look through your own lens. That's how I treat people. If a client tells me something and I mess it up on the contract, I'm going to make it right.
Right.
Because that's on me, and that's just how I treat people. All right. We're doing this for Mississippi right now. I know a lot of my listeners from Louisiana. We're doing this for Mississippi because the laws do change. All right. Me and my siblings, say I got a sibling or two, just inherited some property. Our dad died, and then when our mom died, we inherited. Or my uncle left me some property. Can I sell it right away? What do I do? What do I got to do?
All right, so that one's a loaded question.
Yeah, very loaded.
So it's going to depend on. It'll depend on your father and mother die with a will or without a will. Now, in Mississippi, if they die with a will, there's no statute of limitations on probating a will. So if they died 100 years ago and they have a will, we can still probate it, and we still need to probate it. If they die,
and probate it is exercise what's...
Right. So to probate a will, you bring it to an attorney's office. They file it. They ask the court to admit it to probate, and there's numerous different kinds of probate, one being common form. And a common form probate is your typical probate. It takes anywhere from 90 to 120 days to do. The issue with that is that there's still a 2-year statute of limitation for will contests, and sometimes banks will say, you know, we're not just going to give you money on this, even though, say, Dad left everything to Slade. You know, we're not going to give you money until we know that, let's say, Kristen and Tal aren't going to contest it or something like that. So we'll do what's called a solemn form probate, where we know that you have to adjudicate the heirs, and those are the people who would get the property if there were no will. And basically, they're the ones who have standing to do a will contest. We'll serve all those people. We'll adjudicate them to be the heirs, and it's kind of you speak now and contest or forever hold your peace. So when it's finished, you can sell the property. So there's no
or inhabit the property, or
that's right. The one thing that's common on the Louisiana side is that they'll have a dad pass away that lived in Louisiana, and they'll start the probate on the Louisiana side. And a lot of the Louisiana attorneys, you know, I know there's some good ones, but they're guilty of getting that judgment of possession and just filing it in our
This
courthouse.
actually happens a lot.
This happens a lot. I love finding them because it lets me know there's been an estate done, but it does absolutely nothing for transferring the property in Mississippi. Mississippi does not recognize judgment of possession properly transferring the property. We would need to do some form of probate over here, whether that's a full probate or what's called muniment of title.
These are a lot of big words. You're gonna have to do your Webster's out.
I know. I need to, I guess, stay on the surface here. But muniment of title is a shorter form of probate. But again, even then, the person has to be deceased long enough for us to rely on it for title purposes. If mom and dad die without a will, and this is very common in our county, when mom and dad say die without a will, we have to adjudicate who their heirs at law are. A lot of people don't realize that the spouse is only treated as a sibling, a child. Okay, so let's just say Alan Priest, he'll have to forgive me for say you passed away with no will, right? It would go, your mother would only get a fourth. It would go fourth to Slade, fourth to Tal, fourth to Chris.
So your mom, she doesn't just get
the property.
Like if I died, Lori just doesn't get all my property. My kids and Lori get the property.
And a lot of people think, oh, this is heir property, so spouses of people don't get it. That's just not true. Spouse always, comes in. If someone dies without a will, we'll still have to do a form of administering the will. They call it succession in Louisiana. It's an administration of an estate here. We have probate a will if there's a will, administer the estate. Same kind of processes. Takes anywhere from 90 to 120 days, depending on how complicated it is.
So if I die, like, it's morbid, but if I died tomorrow, I have a will. Adam did it for me. Yes, and Adam does that sort of thing. And it does it. If you own land and things like that, it's good to get somebody like Adam to do it, because I'm going to assume that land and stuff like that maybe needs to be treated a little different.
It absolutely does. And attorneys that don't do a lot of land stuff that try to do will, they can seriously mess up, change the title by wording things a certain way. And so if you have land and you're going to do a last will and testament, make sure you know a land attorney to do your last will and testament. And I'm not trying to take business from anyone, but it's just the difference between the word of and the or my, and I mean, is all the difference when it comes to real estate.
And if you, and so many of my clients out there, I always said we're selling a dream, of you having your property. And so many of my clients, I want to have this so I can give it to my kids one day. Well, guess what? Let's make sure that your kids aren't fighting bad titles and things like that and things. So to get back to my question, if I die tomorrow and with a will, how long, like if Lori said, I got to sell this piece of property, if I die with a will, it's very clear you did it, how long does it take till Lori could actually do it?
If everything, the stars aligned and everything was just perfect.
Court dates, all that
90 to 120 days, probably a little bit longer than that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And what the biggest time issue you have is that you have to do notice to creditors. And that's us. We put in the paper, you'll see it in the paper, it'll say, anybody that Slade Priest owned money, come now, forever hold your peace, kind of thing. And they have
there'll be a lot of people out there.
Well, they have 90 days to probate a claim, and we're required by law to wait 90 days. So I'll get clients just beating down the door. What's taking so long with the state? I have to let it sit. It has to sit that long before we can close. And sometimes, I've done this for you a few times, I don't like to do it, but in the middle of a state, we'll petition to ask for a piece of property to be sold. But if I do that, I'm not dispersing those proceeds yet. We're keeping those proceeds in the estate, because if a creditor comes in, we need that.
Yeah, need to be able to pay them.
Right, you got to be able to pay them. And once that's been closed and the notice of creditors run, I'll disperse the proceeds. But say if you got a buyer that says, I'm about to leave, I'm not waiting for this estate to be done, we can potentially do that.
And I'm thinking of my listeners out there. Look, don't let any of this stuff scare you. That's why you hire a good real estate agent, a good attorney, use a quality bank. Because if you hire these professionals, no different than if you were getting brain surgery, you would go to the best brain surgeon. So many people out there, when they choose their real estate agent and attorney, hey, I'm going to go to the cheapest guy. Well, you're going to go to your cheapest guy for $1 million property. You didn't take your Ford to the cheapest mechanic. You took it to the one that would do the best job. And so that's why you hire. Hey, look, when it's all peaceful and everything's perfect, but when it hits the fan, that's when you need the right people in your corner.
And I've had it happen. Someone says, well, this person's quicker and faster, and they'll go to them, and, I might get the title 5 years later or 2 years later. And, the problem is, this sounds terrible, you can't hide from these local attorneys. Eventually, the property,
it's coming back.
They're going to run it, and it's going to come up. And if you signed a warranty deed selling it to somebody, you may be on the hook for it. So,
and cheaper's not always better. Like you said, faster. Everybody wants stuff now. I get it. I'm guilty too. But cheaper's definitely not always better.
On a lighter note, I know I'm giving all these complications and time frames with the states, but if someone dies without a will and they've been deceased over 3.5 years, sometimes we can do just an affidavit of death and heirship, and we have to have 2 of them, and they have to be signed by someone who knew the deceased, who knew they didn't have a will, knew when they died, knew who their spouse, if they had any, and children. And if I can get 2 people who don't stand to benefit, it can't be Slade Priest saying I'm the sole and only heir of Alan Priest. It has to be someone, say Mr. Allen's neighbor or cousin or something like that. And so that's a very inexpensive way to transfer if someone died without a will and they've been...
See, it all goes back to the Bible. You know, 2 witnesses is a big deal in the Bible, and I never get away from that. Well, this next topic I got on here on the list is I probably deal with this conversations more than anything. Hey, I got this piece of property. It's landlocked. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what that means. Okay, so I may be wrong. If it has a legal right of way to it, which means you legally can drive to it, you have an access. I don't really consider that landlocked. I mean, It may be landlocked because it doesn't touch a public road, but probably more than that is, hey Adam, I've got this 40 acres. You know, I got what do people say? You know, I know I can't be landlocked. You got to give me right of way.
Right. So this is the most common question I get at parties, gatherings, everywhere is that statement that you know, I got to get access, and there's some truth to that, but honestly, they got to give me access. They got to give me access, and that's not always the case. Okay, so
and when it is the case, it's kind of loaded.
Oh yeah, if it's the case, you're gonna pay for it, right? And so let's just say, Slade, you buy 40 acres, it's landlocked, and all that kind of stuff, and when people say I'm landlocked, they got to give me access. Typically, what they're referring to is an easement by necessity, also known as an implied easement. But what a lot of people don't know is that an element of that easement that you have to prove to a court is that the piece that you own and the piece that you're saying you have an implied easement through had to be owned by the same person at one time or entity. And so what that is to protect. It says, say I owned a 100-acre tract to the public road and I sold you the back 40. Well, then you would have an implied easement through me. But an implied easement,
banks don't work off implied easements.
Not unless it's confirmed in court, right?
Okay.
You know, so yeah, you can have an implied easement by law, but until I go and file suit and adjudicate it against that person, which is going to take months, title insurance is not going to be okay with it. The bank's not going to necessarily loan the money on it. And so,
if the bank loan, they say, "Oh, I know somebody did a bank. They took something else for collateral."
Right, or it wasn't that 80-20 split you're normally looking at. They'll do it on half the dollar or something like that.
Right.
But one of the biggest issues, I'm dealing with one right now. It was not common title. I'm trying to get through this piece of property, and I don't have any, potentially an implied easement because they weren't part of the same tract one time. All the way back to the United States. United States gave it to Farmer Jim on this side, and he gave it to Farmer Bob on this, and so I don't have an implied easement. Another one that is the most common one I see a lot is easement by prescription, which is a fancy word for easement by adverse possession.
Right. I've been going in that place for such and such years.
Right. And so it's just like adverse possession. Mississippi is a very short time period, it's 10 years. The prescriptive easement's the same way. And that's basically, it's open notorious that I've been using it for 10 consecutive years without permission. And that's, I mentioned.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to say without permission. That means if someone gives you permission,
right,
doop, takes it away.
And I've had people come to the party and say, look, my great grandfather had permission in 1920 to use that easement. We've been using it ever since, and therefore we have it. Well, when your grandfather had permission 100 years ago, it wipes out any claim of prescriptive easement. Right?
But if he had permission, that means I have permission.
Permission can be revoked.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so, but the problem is you weren't doing it adversely. I was giving you permission to do it.
Gotcha.
And so that wipes out any claim of prescriptive easement. And so, then you're down to your last resort, which is a private drive easement, and that's through the court of eminent domain. And, it's in a completely separate court, in circuit court. You know how a government comes and they'll take your land for a highway, but they have to give you just compensation. Well, there's a similar proceeding for a private individual. So the individual comes and says, look, I don't have access. I need reasonable access through, and you got to pay for it. And it can be astronomical, right? So
typical what I see, and tell me if this is common because you see it more than me, is if you get, like, you sue for access and you get that access, usually what you have to pay is that they will take this property. This is what it appraises for without the easement. This is what it appraises for with the easement.
Right.
the difference in the cost is usually what you have to pay.
And not just that. Yeah, you're exactly right. So what the course will do is they'll say, okay, what is the value of the amount of acreage you're taking up in the easement alone? Like, so if I come through Slade
2 acres,
and I'm taking 2 acres, they're going to take that value, and then they're going to say, okay, what's Slade's property worth without an easement, and what's it worth with one?
Which can be huge.
Right, which could be $100,000, right? And then not including that, but you also, your appraisals you're paying for at the court, you're paying your attorney to fight that. Once the judge determines that it's you need reasonable access and you're landlocked, then it's a jury question sometimes as far as like how much. So it could just get chaotic. And I tell people all the time when they come to my office, if you can get that easement for $10,000, never file suit. Pay the $10,000, right? And honestly, some instances, even if you think you have a slam dunk case, if they come in and say, I can buy it for 20, non-exclusive, perpetual, which means you can transfer it. Buy it. You know, I don't really like doing them, but I have several that I'm doing them, and they're never as easy as you think they're going to be.
Speaking of landlocked, while we're on this topic, just from a real estate standpoint, hey, Slade, I got this 40 acres. I see stuff in Wilson County going for $3,500, $4,000 an acre. My 40's worth that. If it's landlocked, it ain't.
I mean, you're probably talking about 50 cents on the dollar, if that.
If I can sell it.
Right.
And usually what you got to get, I got one right now I'm about to send to Adam, that's landlocked. It's going to be $2,500, $3,000. But you know who's buying it? The neighbor.
Right. And so that's basically what you're limited to. You're either limited to purely cash buyers who, you know, because a bank's not you typically wanting to touch a landlocked piece of property. And if not a cash buyer, you're basically to a point where you're asking neighbors. And sometimes that can be beneficial because if you, I hate to say it, but if you have competing neighbors that want the property bad, then you can get real prices for it.
Right.
But most of the time what happens is usually one neighbor that it only makes sense to buy from, and they'll basically say, you know, I'll give you 33 cents on the dollar or whatever for it. But usually you can get a little higher with neighbors.
Adam said something before we started the podcast about landlocked property, which is a great point. If you're buying a piece of property and there's a piece of landlocked property behind it, assuming it has clean title and stuff like that, which a lot of times they don't. But anyway, if you're trying to expand like all of us land guys are, you know, hey, I don't want it all. I just want everything that touches me, kind of deal. Well, guess what? That stuff that touches you that's landlocked, sometimes you can get it for cheaper. And if you're the only buyer out there, and also don't get hung up on getting a great deal when a good deal works. And what I tell you about, I told my client the other day, he said, I ain't paying $3,000 an acre for this landlocked piece of property. I pay $2,500. I told him, I said, the day you buy it, you have access. It goes up $1,000 an acre. Because I said, where else are you going to get that kind of rate of return, you know?
That's exactly right. And I tell people when they call and they want to buy something, and I say, well, one thing that I look at when I go to buy a tract is, like I said, I'm not trying to hit a home run necessarily on the tract that's touching the road. I'll pay that fair price if it's got landlocked tracts all the way around it. Not all the way, but just if I see a 40 that touches on the back, and in my head, just like you said, I'll say, you know, even if you're paying more than you think it's worth, that anybody else will pay for it. You know, let's just say anybody else that's a $1,500 an acre tract that's landlocked, and you pay $2,500 an acre. Well, if you're connected to it,
and your land's worth $3,500,
you immediately turn that 40-acre tract into a $3,500. You just increase your net worth by $40,000.
Right.
We have a client right now. I think I'm using a client that's doing this, and you know, he's fair prices and whatnot. But I've said that a million times. When you buy that piece of property, your net worth just increased $40,000 to $60,000. So when I'm buying a tract, I like to look to see, one, are these landlocked tracts around it that I could potentially pick up later? But one big thing, and this is important to talk to your realtor or your lawyer before you go down that road, check the names, because some of these guys are names that have been in Woodville forever and will never sell property. You know, I would say never, but there's a lot that if they're wanting to expand, you know, we can tell them, you know, I'll be honest with you, good luck, but that's...
yeah, I can point to 20 names in Woodville and say, nope, Nope.
And I'm not gonna out any of them on here.
Yeah, we're thinking the same ones.
But we all know the same exact names. It's been the names that have been here since the Spanish were here, right? And so, you know, in the United States came here, and the original patents, those people are still here.
And look, what people don't understand is like, we mean that when they said they're not going to sell. We know who owns the land that touches every piece of land I hunt right here. He is not selling. Him. I'm pointing. If you're listening, I'm pointing south and west. They're not selling. If the land's worth 5,000 an acre and I bring them 10 tomorrow, guess what's going to happen? They're going to say thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
Not even interested.
And that's exactly right. And I can tell you, Perrytown, the same way. There's people there that money, you know, and they're really good people. Money doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means to them. There's lots of land rich people out there that have a shotgun house size of this room. And
you could give me, this piece of land I'm sitting on right now, you know, this is where I want to be. If you came in tomorrow and gave me 40% over its value, I probably wouldn't sell, just because how could I replace the place that I want to raise my family? And in a recreational standpoint, you could say, how am I going to replace the place that I've been working hard my whole life? Sometimes in land, the money doesn't have to make sense. And what I mean by that is, if you did everything right in business and life and school to where you could afford this $1 million tract of land, well, if you had to overpay for it by just a little bit, like right. Sometimes when we die, I'm not getting spiritual on here, but when we die, the pile of money we have beside the bed is irrelevant.
Right. But I'll remember where I shot my first duck. You know,
that's it. That's it. I can walk you to stand still in the tree where I killed my first deer. I can walk you to it right now, where my kids killed their first deer, where Lori killed her first big buck this year, right here on this place. And so that kind of stuff, you know, it means a lot, and some people won't sell. We got a long ways off from landlocked property. Right. But anyway, landlocked property is not necessarily what you think it is. And look, let me tell you this. If you have a good easement that a good attorney drew up, and it is perpetual, that means
perpetual, non-exclusive, which means it can be transferred and it goes with the property.
Goes with the property. For instance, a little 36 acres Adam closed for me the other day right down the road right here. I've sold it 3 times. And Adam, you know, it has an easement that goes to it. And guess what? Doesn't hurt the value. People love it. They like the seclusion. And look, people say, I don't want property with easement. If I could choose right now to have road frontage at my house or half a mile easement down the good road, I would choose a half a mile easement because of the seclusion. I really would. You know, that for future value and splitting up and things may not be the best, but for me, every day of my life, listening to highway noise, turkey season's coming up, listening to turkeys, it's way better to turkey hunt a mile off the road than it is a quarter mile off the road.
That's right. And I'm not saying, you know, landlocked property is definitely opens up a buyer pool for people who can be able to afford that big tract, myself included, right? But I just encourage you, I'm not trying to scare you off of it, but call a local. Make sure, call me,
what do you know about? And that's right. Experience matters. You know, experience with your land person, your realtor or your attorney. Experience is undefeated. You know, that's where it's at. Well, we're getting to some pretty good stuff. Okay, something I had thought of it the third time I wrote it down. All right. You said something earlier about, you representing here. This is not normal in law, but in a real estate transaction, Adam can represent both sides. And so can I, from an agent standpoint. But tell me why that means, because the question I get, Slade, the seller's got their attorney. Do I need to go get my own attorney, or vice versa? Right.
And I always, if anybody ever feels that way, my first thing is, please, if at any point you feel uncomfortable, go do it. I'm never going to discourage you. If you feel like you need your own counsel, more than happy with that. There's plenty of attorneys around in Amite County and Adams County, great people I work with all the time. I would just encourage you to get someone that does land, right? And mine's not so much as I technically now there's times where I represent the buyer because the buyer said, I want you to represent me, or the seller. But for the most part, I still owe everyone a fiduciary responsibility. And for instance, the seller, when I'm doing a closing, if I'm representing the buyer, I still got to make sure the seller gets paid. Mm-hmm. You know, I still got to make sure the buyer gets his title exam, and I got to make sure the bank gets their lender's policy and it's the way they like it. So I owe everyone there a fiduciary responsibility. So you see, I get that disclosure representation signed every closing, which is a waiver of conflict of interest, because there's natural conflicts you can't avoid.
Right. And same way with dual agency with me. So dual agency, which I do most of the time, actually represent both sides in a transaction, which I like. And let me tell you why I like it, because nobody fumbles the ball. And look, and I'm not saying you let every agent do dual representation. Look, I'm going to treat you right. If I say it, I'm going to do it. I never ask my sellers their bottom number. I never ask my buyers their top number. And that's really the main thing. Other than that, I just want everybody to get a fair deal. A fair deal. If you want somebody that's, trying to swindle, I ain't your guy. Right. And it's the same way with attorneys. If you're working with good people, professionals, I don't see any problem with it. So, do I need to get my own attorney? If you feel like you need to, yeah. If you're using anybody I recommend, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not billing any different if you use somebody else.
Yeah.
So, if you want to pay some extra, you can.
All right, Adam. A lot of these guys that listen to this podcast are young. They want to buy property one day, and they want to own property. All right, I'm getting my finances in order, Adam. And we're not talking about banking fees, but attorney costs. Tell me what, and this is a loaded question, but I get it asked once a week.
What's it going to cost?
What's it cost me to close? What are the costs associated with closing?
Yeah, and I'm going to give you the most attorney answer ever, and that depends, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people will tell me, oh, well, running title on a 1,000-acre tract is the same as running title on a 5-acre tract, and that may be as far as time, depending on what it is.
Liability,
but I have liability. If I mess up on a title on a $5 million deal, well, I'm on the hook for $5 million, so I'm going to charge for that much liability. Yeah. It keeps
me and Adam got one that big right now.
Right, and it keeps me up at night. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. sweating, wondering if I checked that like I was supposed to. So for me to wake up at 3 a.m. not sweating, I'm going to get paid for it, right? And so typical, if you're just starting out and you're buying a tract, your tile exam ranges anywhere from, I don't know, $500-$600 for the smaller stuff.
Is it a percentage? How does it work?
We typically do it that way. I have a little chart. People think that I'm billing you more than this, whatever. I have a chart, and if your purchase price is between $50,000 and $100,000, it's this, and $100,000 to $200,000, and it keeps going all the way. Now, I always, when it gets high, I'll usually discount it back. Specifically, if you get insurance, if you get title insurance, I get a portion of that fee, not all of it, and I don't have any.
Not a lender's insurance.
Owners and lenders. I get a portion of the lender's policy too. Now, I can't really control that number. I First American's my insurance, but I can control the title exam.
I'm going to defend. I did this in Louisiana today. Somebody said, "Yeah, man, you said that title insurance is $7,000 on this place, and this is a big place." And I said, "You realize the attorney, which is a client of mine, he has zero to do with that. Like he punches in the numbers and they send him a number, right?"
It's purely based on purchase price. So it just keeps going up. If it's $10 million, it's going to be astronomical. If it's $50 million, it just keeps going up, right? And so, there used to be some things, if you finance within a year, you get a little discount here, but that's typically outside the attorney's control. That's more of the insurance company. Now, the title exam is within my control. So if I'm doing a really big deal and you get owner's title insurance, I'm going to cut you a break on the title exam. I'm going to cut it back a little bit. Now, some people will try to say, Adam, what do you charge for a title exam? And I'll tell them, and then they'll say, no insurance. Well, I was giving you that price if you got insurance. Now, I'm going to increase the title exam if you don't, because then I'm on the hook for that much,
right?
Not just First American. And I've kind of danced around your question, but typically if it's small and you're like, if you're getting I'm not talking about bank fees or anything, just me. You range from $1,000 to a couple $1,000s, right? And typically, unless you can always agree in the contract to who pays what, but typically the buyer fronts majority of that cost.
And that's all negotiable, but there is how it's usually done.
Right. And if you're a young guy and that's important to you, and look, I have enough to get this loan and buy it, a seller, if you're willing to give him a little better price, the seller may say, okay, well, I'll pay your costs if you're struggling with that,
And I'm going to dive into this closing cost and what I recommend. And look, everybody, it's all negotiable. And I help, the real estate agents will usually write the contracts. Well, who's paying closing costs? All right, first of all, and this is how Slade does business, the banking fees in the land business are on the buyer. That's your bank. You chose them. You chose what packages you want and how much you cost, that's on you. Appraisals, that sort of thing. What I tell my buyers, I say, listen, no matter what happens, we're dealing with humans on both sides of this. And humans have emotions, if we like it or not. Let's keep our sellers in the best emotional state we can. So he likes us, so he gives us the best price. It's not about who wins. Right. We want to all win here. And so what I tell a lot of my buyers is pay all the closing costs. Because here's the deal. You know who pays the closing costs? You can put this on the Instagram reel, Bucky. You know who pays closing costs? The guy who brings the check to the closing. That's who pays it. Right. It's just divided out different on the settlement sheet, and people don't understand that. So if the seller will give you a better deal because you agree to pay all the closing costs, and all the closing costs he was going to pay anyway was $400, $500, $600.
Nah, not even that. Right.
That's why I say do that. Now, it's all negotiable and things like that, and some people have different comfort levels, but that's what I recommend, and that's why. Because the guy who brings a check to the table is the one who pays the closing costs.
And I agree with that. When a seller hears, oh, he's going to pay all closing costs, in their mind, people can't help it. In their mind, they're like, oh, wow.
I'm getting a deal.
That's getting a deal. And really,
what a nice guy.
It's only $400 maybe. I would say only that. That's a lot of money.
So a lot of times the standard in our area is the seller pays for the deed prep, maybe half the closing fee.
Well, that's what I do. I typically, on a bigger transaction, the seller pays for the deed, which is a couple $100 and $26 to record it, typically. And half the closing, and that's just because I'm. And
when we say a closing fee, so attorneys usually have like I dealt with a big one in Baton Rouge today, and it's a $600 a closing fee. And I know Adams there's sometimes $250, sometimes $500. Different attorneys around here.
Yeah, and honestly, different attorneys charge more for that and less than I charge for other stuff. So you can't always say, Natchez attorney only charges $100 or charges $1,000 for his closing. Well, yeah, I may be cheaper on the closing, but I may be a little more expensive on the title exam or something. So some of us as attorneys, we're not always kind of congruent on everybody's charging the same stuff for everything. But at the end of the day, they're all usually typically the same.
So that's the Hunting Landman recommendation. If you're a buyer, keep your seller in a good mood. Agree to pay the closing costs, because typically it was just a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, you're giving him $400 and you probably got $1,000 off the purchase price or more. Or more.
Literally on stuff I do, sometimes you'll say that and you'll get an extra $10,000 off.
Right, it's just a mental.
And I don't say this to I don't say this just to waste my breath and it's easy for me to write on the contract. I say it because it works.
Right.
All right, let me see what we got here. All right, Adam, this is really not your department, but we deal with them a lot. 1031 tax-free exchanges. We're going to do a whole podcast on that with a 1031 agent one day. All right, Adam, I'm selling my 100-acre. Slade listed for me in Woodville. He got me a great price. He's the best realtor ever. And he's but I want to buy another property, Adam. I want to do a 1031. Slade told me about it. Can you handle that?
Yes, and obviously I'm not a 1031 exchange agent or anything, but we do have companies that we do business with regular. And Slade, just for the listeners, Slade brought up 1031 because he saved me one time in a closing.
I didn't even actually bring that up, but
that's the only reason he's brought this up. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, had to get a California 1031 to help us at the last minute.
That is that closing and the other one, you know which one I'm talking about. With Barrett. Yeah. Anyway, the other one we did, though, if I ever write a book about my career, they will both be in there.
That's right. Well, this one was, all right, so anyways, 1031, I've gotten off track. So
that is a good story.
All right, so say you inherit a piece of property from your dad in 1930, right, and then you go to sell it today or something, or grandpa, you inherited it. Well, you're going to pay some serious capital gains, right? You're going to only have a stepped-up basis of what the property was worth when you inherited it in 1930, and if you sell it for $4,000 an acre now, you got that potential capital.
Yeah, if you got it at $1,000, you sell it for $4,000, you got $3,000 of capital gains, and of those gains, that's going to be long term if you own it over a year.
Right.
So of those $3,000, it's going to be $600.
Right, and the same principle, like if I bought a tract for $1,000 an acre, and I turn around the next day sell it for $3,000 an acre, well, I got $2,000 an acre in capital gains. Right, you're going to pay some serious taxes. So you can do a 1031 exchange. You say, look, I don't want to take that money. I want to roll it into another piece of property.
Which is tax-free, legal, done every day.
Which they're trying to get rid of every chance they get. But you can go with a 1031 company. You put your money flows through that. You don't get your money. It goes into another transaction.
Yeah, you don't get money when you sell. It goes to somebody else's account.
And it doesn't necessarily have to take place simultaneously. You'll designate certain tracts that you're interested in buying. And if you,
I'll go into that if you want me to.
Yeah, and so when you buy these extra tracts, it goes into the land, and you don't end up having to pay capital gains, which saves you a good bit of money. And you don't have to put it all in 1031. You could take, if you're like, but I need
I do that all the time.
$5,000 to fix the kitchen counter or whatever. You can pull that out. You'll pay taxes a little bit on it, but not.
And so, and we're going to do a whole podcast on 1031 exchanges. I know enough about it to get me in trouble, so I'm going to tell you what will get me in trouble. All right, we close on property A, this 100 acres. We have. When the day we close on it, we have up to 45 days to identify up to 3 properties, and there's some exceptions here, but this is general. 3 properties. So we close on January the 1st, 45 days later, call it February 15th. We have to identify up to 3 properties. We have to close on one of those 3 properties 180 days from Jan 1, not the 45 day, from Jan 1. So we have 6 months to close. And you don't have to do it into one property. You can do it into several properties. So it's a great tool. Make sure your agent has reminders in their phone about the dates, and your attorney and your 1031 company. The 1031 company that I use a lot, they are constantly sending you emails about your dates and your due and making sure you're in compliance. That's huge.
And telling me about that you want to do a 1031 exchange at the closing table is too late.
Yeah.
I've had that happen numerous times. They'll come and say, oh, by the way, I want to do a 1031. It's something that we had to prep for several weeks in advance. It's not something you can just all of a sudden do at the closing
But
table.
I have seen it done that day. I'm just throwing that.
My prices will go up.
But it was it was. I have seen it done that, but it's a great way. So if a lot of people that listen to this podcast, I tell them, I give them away the secret sauce. I started with 12 acres and a house trailer, and I got a good bit more than that now. And I did a lot of it through the 1031 tax-free exchange. The track we're sitting on right now, I did a bunch of 1031s to buy it, including that 12 acres and a house trailer.
And I'm like you. I know a little bit about 1031 to get myself in trouble, but I do want to say that if you buy and you try to sell the next day,
that's a red flag.
That's a red flag that's going to probably get you audited, right? And so I know some people like to say wait a year or 2 years is safe.
A year and a day is a rule of thumb,
right? But in all fairness, though, there's not really a set time.
No, it's very gray, and every title agent every 1031 agent will tell you that. And the main word, and look, we're going to get in trouble because we're going deep in this. The main word is intent. That's it. That intent. Okay, what does Slade mean by this? I buy it with my intent is to keep it forever for my kids, and Adam gives me a stupid amount of money the next day.
Right.
Well, intent can change, and in that sense, with the right judge and audit, you would be okay.
And I'll give the advice of intent. That's a good argument, but the best way is just to avoid the red flag.
Right, that's right.
If it comes up, that's your defense. But obviously, try to be careful with it.
Right. Typically 1031s are for longer term investments. That's
it's not for flipping houses.
And we're going to little asterisk right here. We are not 1031 agents, so consult your 1031 agent.
That's exactly right.
Put that asterisk in here. So that's all good. I think this is all really good stuff. I'm trying to think. Look, we're gonna get through some lighter stuff. Right. You ready for turkey season?
I am. Well, I'm not very good at it, but I love it. So
Adam is a typical Mississippi State fan. Like, I'm not very good at. Like, that's what I love about. That's what I like Mississippi State fans better than Ole Miss fans, because Ole Miss thinks they need to compete for a national championship in football every year, and Mississippi State fans like, yeah, we're pretty good this year. No, we suck. We had a good time.
Yeah, we're more realistic about life and everything, and just all around better people. No, I'm just kidding for all you Ole Miss fans, but not really.
Oh, Steven's out there. Steven and Barrett's blowing the top right now.
Yeah, besides Steven Barrett, the rest of you can kick rocks. No, I'm kidding.
But Adam loves the turkey hunt like we do. Are you going on any trips this year?
Yeah, plan to make a trip to Kentucky. Have a really good a friend of ours out there, Mr. Tyler, and he comes every year and comes hangs out with us. And
That's your hog hunter?
Yeah, hangs out with our family, good people. We go out and hang out with them, and it's just a good time and just really good.
Are y'all doing Missouri again?
I don't know. These realtors just own me about getting these titles out, so I don't know how many trips I can actually take this year.
That's what me and another realtor, a good friend of mine, were talking today. He's like, during turkey seasons is the only time I'm like, you know what? If it costs me some business, so be it. I'm going turkey hunting. And I'm the same way.
If it's before 10 o'clock, we will not be closing after March 15th. Mm-hmm. But I'm really just excited. I got two nephews, Jackson and Tolbert, that are really into turkey hunting right now. And Jackson killed just a short enough big one last year, and we're excited to maybe get Tolbert on one this year.
Yeah, so. It's fun. I probably will bring her so she can hear it, but I don't think Asa is ready to be that still and quiet for that long.
Well, we're probably going to steal one of Boone's boys, Montgomery or Strickland, come with me so they can experience, or Boone will probably take them. But I need,
Asa went with me last year. It was on an episode. We roosted a turkey, and me and Blake doubled on him the next morning. We come around the bend, and it was just a God thing. I said, whoa, 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 and his fan was to us. So I grabbed her, and we backed up, and she got to see him, both of them strutting. And then we crawled in the weeds, and we got to watch them for a while. Then they went and flew up and gobbled twice. I was like, that was awesome.
Well, my oldest Win, he took him deer hunting for kind of the first time this year, and he gets out there and he's looking at the deer stand, looking around, and he said, "You built this?" And I said, "No, I was Uncle D," and he was just thoroughly impressed with it. But then he told his teacher that Daddy has a secret tree house, a secret house in the woods. So I had to explain to his K4 teacher that I do not have a secret house in the woods; it's a tree stand. So anyway.
That's funny. All right, Adam, we're going to get to the part of the podcast where I ask one of my favorite questions. It is, you can find out a lot about somebody. All right, you got me and you go to Norwood, and we buy a lottery ticket, and you get $100 million clean. $100 million clean. Tell me about the next couple of days. What we buy? Where are we buying land? Why?
All right. Well, I like how he said where we buying land. He's right. So one, I'm going to look at my wife and say, "What do you want?" And then
take care of Mama first.
That's right. And I'll probably call my mama next. Say, "What do you want?" But she wants a deck, so we'll build it. And then I'm buying not.
I'm calling your mama if this happens. We got to get better than a deck.
Yeah. Well, she'll get whatever she wants, but she's been wanting a deck. But and all the listeners out there, there's not a single deer, turkey, or anything in Perrytown. So I'm gonna preface that with this. But I would put every bit of it in buying as much as I could in Perrytown.
So you could buy North and South Swayze.
Yep.
And you could go east into the good hunting hills over there.
I would have every bit of it.
West.
And honestly, north of the county is not as good hunting necessarily where we are as it is in Woodland and stuff. But that's where I was born and raised. That's where I killed my first doe.
And my theory behind that, because that soil is beyond me why it grows. They don't have as many deer in that part of the county, but the quality is sometimes. I mean, Adam killed a really good deer this year, but where Adam is actually talking about, I think the quality is not as good because there's not as many big private landowners.
That's right. We got a lot of leaseholders, and there's a lot of shooting.
A lot of government land,
and it's like World War II. It used to be like a lot of the old owners there had passed away, and the property's been sold, or warehouse is leasing, but. Yeah, it's home for me.
Is it many people run dogs out by you anymore?
No, not anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dog hunting. We're going to do a podcast one day on dog hunting because look, as much as we hate to say it, that's a lot of people love that pastime, and I hate that it's going away, but I don't know if there's a whole lot of, it's tough now accepting the government.
I'm going to be silent on it. I'm part of I'll probably be a part of the lawsuit soon on it, so I'm going to be quiet about what side I'm on. So.
Well, and look,
I see both sides.
I've been on some great dog hunts and stuff too, but like what the sheer facts of the matter is leases cost too much, land costs too much, liability. It's just
lawyers. We've ruined everything.
They have.
So.
Well, so we're buying land in Perrytown. Are you not buying any out of state? Are we just buying in Perrytown? We got $100 million.
No, I would probably, maybe if there's anything, I would buy as much, but in Perrytown, half the people aren't going to sell. So I'd probably get all of Perrytown, right? That's available. And then from there, I'd probably be buying like 1 acre tracts in every state. That way we can go, or I don't know.
1 acre?
Well, I'm not greedy. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I hadn't brought you up to northern Missouri yet, or Iowa. You got to. When I brought Caleb to Iowa the first time, he's like, these deer and turkeys are dumb. Right. In fact, the first time I ever brought Caleb...
That's what I need to hunt.
First time I ever brought Caleb to Missouri, it was I was sick that morning. I got some kind of stomach bug on the way up there. And anyway, Ryan was calling. Me and Barry Cooper were on the good, and Caleb was running the camera. And at daylight, son, it was just on us. We had, I think, like 6 within 80 yards. I mean, blowing the tops off. 2 of them flew down. We killed 2 of them. Boom. Ryan almost killed 2, almost killed 3rd. And he said, why do we hunt in Mississippi, Louisiana? This is where it's at. Because he'd been hunting with me all year in Mississippi. He said, this is where it's at.
Well, I'll take that back. I buy some in Kentucky. I'm not going to tell people where because I don't want people to go in there because I went there and there was no hunters whatsoever and there was gobblers in just about everybody's yard. And
can't beat that.
Roads were nice. Everything was clean.
Kentucky's a sleeper. It's a good state.
Yeah, but not going to disclose that county, but very good place.
Well, we're going to summarize this thing real quick. Hire a good attorney when you buy land. All these questions would be taken care of, and you can get answered when you hire the right attorney. Listen to your agent. Okay, hey, if they're an experienced agent and they're worth their weight in salt, if they recommend an attorney, it's because attorney the agent's not going to recommend an attorney that don't take care of their business unless they're good agents. Yeah. Because they want you to be taken care of, they want to get paid, and they want to get it closed in a timely manner. And so listen to your agents, your banks too. The banks probably as much or more than the agent because they know who does a good job with the closings because it's their money they're lending out.
That's right.
If you need to set up an LLC or something, your attorney can do that. If you're thinking about buying, I'm going down my list. If you're thinking about buying land with a partner, definitely get an attorney to set up some agreements or things like that. If you're planning your estate with land and you have I got 100 acres, I have 4 kids. Right. Well, you better, and look, there's all over these counties people that didn't do that, and you got all these skinny little lines, and let's make it where your family still talks to each other after they read the will. Exactly. I sat down with a family the other day, and I was working on getting a listing. And I said, listen, my goal at the end of this bunch of family members is everybody to love each other more than they do today. And this is how we do that. Let me take care of things. We follow things by the book. So it's not he says, she said. It's professionals in the room. But definitely get a professional, get an attorney to help you split up your property. You worked hard for it. You had to pay Uncle Sam 30 or 40% to be it and then afford it. Let's make sure your kids get it and they don't have to fight over it. If you win $100 million, you're not buying in Perrytown because Adam's going to. Legal right-of-ways are not what you not legal right. Landlocked properties are not what you think they are. So get an attorney. Back to all this. Get a good attorney. Call your agent. We're taught in real estate school, don't play attorney. But then we have to fill out contracts and stuff like that, which is contradictory to that. But anyway, if you're I know enough about that stuff to get me in trouble. If we get real deep in it, what do I say? Call Adam.
Yeah, we stay in our lane.
Yeah, everybody stay in their lane. And look, attorneys are guilty, and Adam knows this. He's not, but attorneys are guilty. Like that realtor's charging you too much, or you're paying too much. It's like whoa.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Right.
Yep. All right. I'm trying to think of anything else. We covered 1031s. I think we're good. Bucky, we need to put anything else? You got any questions?
I think a lot of people don't know the answer to this. And you keep saying for a lot of those answers right there, get a good attorney. What's a good attorney?
I would say a good attorney is I think if they're a good attorney, it's going to be easy to find them because all you got to do is ask the people that use them. The bankers.
I don't advertise.
Right.
And I got 50 requests. So not necessarily the guy on the billboard, but just ask around. That's what
ask around. Ask agents. Ask bankers. People in government probably would be a good person to ask. Ask big landowners and things who like timber people who have had to deal with problems and things like that because. Yeah, with there may be somebody young, but they like Adam, for instance. Adam hadn't been doing this. He's young. He's extremely long, but everybody in the town knows, hey, you call Adam when you got a problem because he does a good job. Well, we're going to get out of here. Adam did a great job answering the legal side of real estate, and now we're going to get ready for turkey season. We've got 2 weeks and counting.
I think
And I saw 2 big strutters today, so I'm pumped up. Y'all have a blessed day.
Hey, thank you for listening to the Hunt and Landman podcast. If you will, take a moment, give us a 5-star written review, guys. This really helps us out. And if you know anybody you think will be interested in this podcast, please share it with them.